to see who's around. If there is somebody around, if you can just tell me, if my audio levels are good and if the video quality is good, if I'm in sync, all of that I should be. I had all this figured out last time, but I'll do another double check there. Give everybody a minute or two. Apologize for being late. I'll explain that in a minute once I see if somebody's around here. So, happy Friday night if somebody is. Well, just give everybody a minute or two since I'm actually a minute earlier than my late time was. See if my wife can tell me if it's working okay. All right, I apologize if there's some background noise. I've got the levels of this thing really boosted, but its microphone is what it is. So, all right, just waiting a second here to see who we have, if we have anybody here or not. Hearing static. Okay, good. Well, not good, but that's what I need to find out. Like, is it really bad static? Try moving some things around in case I'm getting interference. Pretty bad. Okay. All right. Well, let me shut off audio here. Apologize for that. See if I can get things resynced up. All right. I apologize if this is staticky again. I'm just trying to test this out. I tried a different USB port. See if it's the mic. I might have to go with the audio on the camera if this mic is bad. Fixed. Okay. Audio port it was. Thank you. All right. So no static at all then, or just a little static? I guess I shouldn't fidget with it if you said fixed. All right. Well, I'm going to go with fixed as being good. So I will tell you that, if there's any kind of background or any kind of feedback noise, it's because, okay, good, no static at all. It's because my mic is on the desk where I've got my drink and everything else. So this mic is not the best. I'll get a better solution in the future for streaming and things like that. But appreciate appreciate you joining me and anybody else that pops into this. I know it's a Friday night. It's a busy night for some people. Worked out the best for my schedule to do it this week, and I apologize for being a half hour late. Did not realize we were going to get 3 inches of snow when I got out of work today, and my 10-minute drive home turned out to be an hour and a half. So that is why I had to push the start time of this out. Also, if you guys hear any kind of kids screaming in the background or anything, my wife and kids are downstairs, but my kids tend to be a little rowdy sometimes. So I'm sure that'll pick up because this thing is seriously is boosted and picks up a lot of noise. So anyways, just to let you guys know that. So hope you guys are having a good Friday out there, and I thought I would just go ahead and start with kind of my topics that I want to do today and see what you think. And obviously, as streams go, things can go off the rails a little bit and be a little different. So my first thing I wanted to talk about was, hence the thumbnail that I use, is kind of pricing, in the status of pricing tiers as it is to audio and gear and just things in general, as in, you know, what do we all consider to be Lowfi, Midfi, and HiFi from a budget standpoint, not quality standpoint, or from a pricing standpoint. I also did want to touch on CanJam. I've got my Chicago 23 CanJam shirt on. RIP to Chicago, by the way, because they're not going back this year and might not be going back to Chicago again, it sounds like, which makes me sad, but it is what it is. And then I also kind of thought about, I'd talk about just my learnings as I've gone through as a YouTuber, because I'm approaching, well, not yet, I will be approaching 2 years in May since I started the channel, and definitely have a lot of things to share on what I've learned. And then kind of goes hand in hand with that, because it's one of the things I have learned, is talking about power requirements from amps and how that relates to our gear, and how there's a lot of misconceptions in that. I am by no means an expert on that topic, but I'm hoping by the time we talk about that, I'll get some more participation, and I think it could be a good discussion, because I've learned a lot myself from the beginning to even where I'm at today. So I'll just jump right into the main topic, and that is pricing tiers. And I'll give some background to that. The reason why I brought this up is I just hadn't really thought about it, but as I got into this hobby, which it's been a few years now since I've been deep in the hobby. I've always loved audio and listening to headphones, and, you know, maybe not IEM so much, but these were convenient today, earbuds and things, that when I actually dipped my toes into audiophile, quote unquote, gear, it was my Tiger 300R from Beyerdynamics that I still have. I probably will never get rid of it, because it was the first true hi-fi purchase I did, in my opinion. I'm a gamer, and I guess you could say my Sennheiser gaming sets could have been more in the realm of audiophile, but I mean, I should break them out one of these days and show you guys. I think it was the GP 600 or something like that. It is a funky looking gaming headset. So anyways, the reason why I brought this up is when I bought the Tiger 300R, I remember at the time, I think they're still about the same price. They're around $150 to $200, depending on sales and things going on. At the time, it was considered not budget, but I guess that somewhere in that gap between budget to mid-tier for a headphone. And I think we need to come up with a category for that, by the way, because it's like you take budget and then you jump to mid-tier. But anyways, so I was looking at that and thinking about it a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to some friends of mine who, I had a couple people that were wanting to get into hi-fi or deeper into headphones. And I had suggested the Tiger 300R because a friend of mine games, and I told him how much money they were, and he's like, oh, well, that's pretty cheap. And I was thinking, that's cheap? So, but like I said, I remember a few years ago when I got them, it was not considered cheap to me. I mean, because gaming headsets at the time were like $70-$80, and if you were spending like $150, you were getting like top end stuff. But I mean, if we look at it now, I mean, you got the Maxwell that's $300 or $330, depending on what version of it that you get. And by no means would I call that cheap, but I feel like that's almost in the budget realm, and kind of makes me think, like, is a Sundara in budget realm now? Because I remember when I first got into the hobby, it was like Tiger 300R, and then you can step up to something like a Sundara, and then maybe step up a little bit more to like a DT 1990. I'm talking just gaming right now, gaming headphones. And then from there, I don't know, like a Focal Elex or something like that. But all of that now, I feel like, is in this weird mid to budget range when it comes to price ratio. And then that jump from mid to hi-fi is crazy. Like I've seen the RU Organic, that, you know, I really love that headphone. It's $1,300 being called mid-tier, mid-fi, whatever you want to call it, gear. And it's crazy because nobody wants to label it hi-fi now because they're like, oh, well, that should be like $2,000. And I had this discussion with my friends and on forums, and I've seen people talking about that. And that's kind of the consensus I'm getting, is that $1,000 is no more considered hi-fi like it used to be. And that's crazy to me. Only because from the outside looking in, before I got into being an audiophile, if you want to call it that, I didn't even know $1,000 headphones existed. I guess if I would have really thought about it ahead of time, I wouldn't have been that shocked when I got into this. But the first $1,000 headphone I saw, I was like, what? Is that like a typo? Or, I mean, just don't. If you're not in it, you don't think about it that way. You look at headphones and you're thinking $300. Okay, that's pretty expensive. Like, no, I mean, they go way above that. So it's interesting to me because if I'm somebody wanting to get into this hobby, like, we're telling somebody, hey, if you want to get into this, but, you know, somewhere in the mid-tier budget range, buy an RU Organic. How much is it? Oh, it's $1,000. Like, what? I mean, that's crazy to me. And maybe I'm just stuck in, you know, times around COVID times and things happen. Maybe that's my problem and not everybody else's, but it does feel pretty crazy to me that we are calling that like a mid-tier product. And then something like the Dan Clark E3 that I just bought, that's $2,000. I mean, I remember when I did my video for that, and I, you know, just, of course, how we do with thumbnails, and I called it an endgame closeback. I do believe that, by the way. I got some flack from people, not in a negative way, but just some friends kind of poked at me for it, and they're like, I never considered anything from Dan Clark endgame, let alone something 2000. And it's like, well, I mean, it's $2,000. I gotta imagine that would be endgame for somebody with that kind of price. But I mean, yeah, things have gotten so expensive everywhere, and it's sad. It's part of the times that we're in, but I guess, you know, audio has to go along with everything else, right? I mean, that's kind of how it is, and things have been adjusted. But I would like to see, I'm sure there is something out there because I haven't researched this topic nearly enough, but I would like to see, like, you know, if you ever type in top 5 headphones or blah, blah, blah of something, I would like to see like what people say when they label $1,000 headphone, what they label that as, if they label that as truly hi-fi, or if they label that as mid-tier, like a lot of people are now calling that. And I think of something like the Empyrean 2, that's $3,000. I mean, to some people that would have been Summit Fi. Guarantee it's not. To them, I think Summit Fi would be like $5,000-$6,000, like Utopia, or the Yamaha headphone, or an LCD5 or something like that. Certainly not an HE1 from Sennheiser. That's, I don't even know what you call that thing. Unreachable? Unobtainium? I don't know. But I think it's an interesting topic to discuss because everybody's at different levels of the journey. And I feel bad for people getting into audio if you're not prepared to spend that kind of money, because I don't think you should have to. And I think people should be able to watch reviews or videos, or, you know, go on forums and things and search products and not feel like they can't be the in crowd without spending so much money. I don't know. Summit Fi, yeah, there you go. It is. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I wanted to start that whole topic and debate. And, you know, you guys that are out there, you know, have any opinions on that, feel free to throw it in, because that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just to get your thoughts and ideas. And this will be played back afterwards for anybody that doesn't watch this stream. Put it in the comments below too. I would love to just hear your thoughts on the different tiers of, you know, audio, and what you guys think of where we're at in the budget realm. The other reason I bring it up too is for amps and DACs. Kind of the unwritten golden rule when I got into headphones, especially in audio, especially like this kind of audio, not speakers, because that's, whew, yeah, we're in a whole different subject there. But with personal audio, the first thing I was told was spend the majority of your money on the headphone and spend the rest on an amp or a DAC. And that is one of those things where I think that's still good advice, but I feel like that advice is being tainted a little bit. And I guess here's a good example of what I'm trying to say is like the Dan Clark E3 that I was just talking about. I've watched HiFi, and there's been a long discussion on that headphone. It's $2,000 headphone. And somebody was talking about, and I will too, that this little guy, Mojo 2, is an excellent amp and DAC for the E3. And it is. Like, this thing pairs really well with the E3. Even though the E3 takes to more power, the Mojo 2 doesn't have a ton of it, and it's not a balanced amp DAC, but it's got so many, DSP options and things like that, and it sounds great with the E3. And somebody was knocked for it because they're like, well, that's not a I don't know, a high enough quality piece of gear. And I think they literally were talking about price. And I mean, that's a $650 portable device. We're not talking cheap here, guys. And I mean, I've listened to the E3 on something like a Schiit Midgard and a Schiit Magni, and I think it still sounds pretty good on that. I know it can sound better. I've heard better. But my point is, like, if you look at the price ratio to the headphone of that, that's getting too close, in my opinion. Like a $2,000 headphone, if you're telling somebody they should spend $1,000 on the amp, come on. I mean, you're telling somebody they should get in $3,000 to truly enjoy something, and I just don't agree with that. I think people need to do more diligence into looking into amps and DACs and what people are saying about them to understand that synergies is still a huge important factor of that. And as you go up the tier of pricing, those percentages shrink, in my opinion. Now, if you're talking tubes, that's a different story, because tubes in general are pretty much going to be, more expensive than other things anyway, especially if you're not doing OTLs, because some OTLs you can get, more of a sub $500, but things that aren't OTLs, transformer, tube amps and things, my HA-3A that's hiding behind me there, I love that amp, even that one's $1,600. So it's not, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling off in a topic there. I hope you guys are following along. What I'm saying is, like, I just don't agree with the ratios, and I wish that wasn't a thing and wasn't talking about a lot, because I feel like that steers people in the wrong direction, to where I think new people in the hobby would just say, forget it, I'm done. Find me some cost Porta Pros and give me an Apple dongle, and you guys peace out. And no offense to those, because the Porta Pros sound damn good, and an Apple dongle, I get it, is a cheap way to listen. And I'm sorry, Tom, Becky, Flafornia, if I said that right. Hello from Los Angeles. And the Cambridge audio, yeah, I can add it to a list for sure. I've got, I'll talk about that too, guys. I've got quite a few things actually coming in that I'm excited about to get out. So, yeah, I think, so for instance, when I bought my Tiger 300R, I had just a Schiit Magni and Schiit Modi. And I mean, if you take that, that was more than expensive than the headphone. I get that, but I also wanted to be able to up my game a little bit without having to up the game of the amp and DAC. And I think from there, I actually went from the Tiger 300R, and my first big purchase, which was a big jump, I gotta admit, went to the Focal Clear MG Pro. That was $1,500. So I didn't make that mid-fi jump. I went from like low end to high right away. And I had the Clear MG Pro for a while, and I really liked that headphone. I'd still own it today if I didn't have issues with the fit. And I actually had an allergic reaction to the pads of the Clear MG Pro. Strange, but I moved on from them because of that reason. Nice, Nathan. I will see you there, my man. That's awesome. Um, Apple Air. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, yeah, it just depends where you're at in the hobby. SN for what you're talking about there with the AirPod Max 550. Yeah, I mean, yes, anything over $200, that's where if you get into it deep and go down the rabbit hole, then you get it. But people from the outside looking in, you're exactly right. They think we're nuts. And I think that's where I was a few years back until I really started to understand. And it's funny, like I can go from listening to like my E3 I was talking about and then throw on my Tiger 300R. And even though I know they still sound so good for the price, I miss out on the sound from the E3. And so then I throw those back on. But selfishly, like I said, I won't move on from a budget headphone. That was my first true, like, good purchase just because, yeah. And the same thing with Cost Porta Pros. They're $60, $50. I don't know, sometimes even $25. I throw them in a bag and take them anywhere I go because they sound so good. If you want to go cost to performance ratio, it kills a lot of things out there in the hobby, in my opinion, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that's where I think, like I said, as far as I still do believe in that first, like I said, unwritten rule that if you're getting into the hobby, spend the majority of your money on the headphone or IEM that you want to purchase and then use a portion to get your amp or DAC. But don't skimp out too bad. I mean, do your research into stuff. You know, you don't have to watch me. Obviously, you can watch anybody or just go on the forums. There's plenty of more in detailed reviews and things on forums. And I don't believe you have to spend a lot of money on an amp and DAC to be started off in a good place. I mean, for instance, the Cayin RU7, like if you're getting into IEMs, the Cayin RU7 is always going to make a recommendation for me. It's $280, so even that is not cheap by any means. But for a portable device to pair up with IEMs and the fact that I do think it works good with full-size headphones, I mean, that's a perfect example of a product that you could get and pair it up with tons of gear and be pretty damn good. Nice. Yeah, I did actually just have a chat with Ryan over email, and he did say he was going to be there. I'm looking forward to meeting the guy in person because I've only emailed him several times. So it'll be nice to see him. I hope he can break away from making a headphone long enough to be at CanJam. Maybe he'll, you know, he should bring him to CanJam and like make a headphone while he's at his booth. Be like, see, told you guys I'm still producing these things. He's not going to do that, but um, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Is like my RU7 is a great example. I know there's some $100 portable units that I have not listened to that have been recommended. I think one of them was a Quest style. Even the Schiit Magni Modi, I will always recommend that. And the Schiit Magni Unity is such a good option now for like $180, and you can get the DAC in it, or 190, whatever it is. I mean, that's an excellent option. There's a lot of all-in-one units that are small enough that can get people really started out on up to probably $1,000. And I say that because the RU Organic $1,000 headphone, and it is very easy to drive and sounds great on all that stuff I just listed. You don't need any kind of crazy gear. And if somebody were to tell somebody that, you know, something like an Organic scales with $1,000 amp, I'm going to have to say no, it doesn't. But again, synergy matters. And hell, there's some, you know, some of the Sennheiser headphones that are like $300 to $400 scale up with expensive gear, but I still say don't start off that way. I think that's a bad way to start. If you're starting off getting some crazy expensive amp and then skimp out on a headphone, I mean, okay, if you want to do it that way, go ahead. But I just think that takes you down the wrong path of the journey. And it's a fun journey. Like anybody's watching this that is like new to audio or new to audiophile or new to personal audio, I do believe it's a fun journey, and I know some people will laugh and say, "Oh, don't go down the rabbit hole. You know, settle on whatever you have that's $200, and you know, never watch anything else." That's easier said than done. I sure as hell didn't do that, and even though I kind of wanted to. I got too much into watching YouTube and stuff like that to get into that deep rabbit hole. And it is a deep rabbit hole. Let me just tell you, as I have all this stuff back here that's added to that, and stuff back there that, not the Funkos, but the headphones that are back there, has got me into it. So, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy the discussions about it as well. So, all right, I'm going to move on from this topic. But if you guys have anything else, drop it in there or in the comments. But honestly, the next thing I want to talk about is CanJam, since Nathan brought it up, because I know there's some other videos and things out there about CanJam, but I thought I would at least share my past experiences, so anybody that's wanting to go to a CanJam may at least get something from this. First of all, if you're going to CanJam to seriously check out gear, do everything you can to do it to make it a 2-day event for yourself. 1 day is not enough, especially if you're going to, New York or SoCal, which honestly, now that we don't have Chicago, I think all of them are going to be pretty busy. I've heard Dallas was actually a really good turnout as well. So 2 days is almost a must if you really want to check out everything. But if you have a small list of maybe 4 or 5 things, yeah, you'd probably do it 1 day. But I do recommend the 2 days also for fatigue purposes. Fatigue, like, to me, it's like an amusement park. When I've gone to amusement parks in the past, I know that if I get there when the place opens, there's no way in hell I'm making it to the end of the day and still have that same excitement. At the end of the day, I'm like, let's ride the Ferris wheel or something. I don't know. Actually, I hate Ferris wheels, but, I'm just, it's kind of the same thing with CanJam. Like, as much as I love it, on day 2, by the last couple of hours, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to listen to anything, or if I do, it's like something I'm not at all interested in, and just listen to just whatever. So that would be the first thing, is just plan for fatigue, because it will happen. You'll sit in so many chairs after people. You'll listen to so much gear after other people. You'll have, your playlists and things that you're listening to. And eventually, no matter what you put on your ears or in your ears, you're just going to get a little bit wore out. So plan on that. The other thing I would say, and this is talked about a lot, is to have some type of a set list, whether you have it on your phone, which is actually what I do. I just have everything, title is what I use. So I have playlists I've already created for CanJam. It says CanJam on it. Then I'll have some playlists that might say like mids, bass, high-end, stage, or something like that, just so I can test those different things if I want to do that. So I'll have my own playlists. It's always been a recommendation from others to bring, if you have like your own dongle or something, or if you have a DAP, DAPs are really good to bring. And I speak from no experience on that, because I don't even own a DAP, but I speak to it from watching what others do, that they'll just plug that into, whatever amp or something they want to listen on, and listen to their own music. I will tell you though, that they've come a long way from even 2 years ago when I first went to my first CanJam, and that pretty much everybody has, a good tablet or laptop set up with a lot of music, and they've got Wi-Fi that pretty much get any track you want, so you can sit down. So don't be worried if you don't come prepared with a playlist, but at least come prepared to know the music that you like, that you want to look up and listen to, because in audio especially, there's nothing worse than like listening to music you don't even like to test out gear. I mean, why would you do that? I wouldn't do that. So yeah, I mean, have an idea of the things that you want to listen to. That would be my second point to whether or not you bring a playlist. Obviously that's the best thing to do. This is just me again, so you don't have to do what I do when I say this, but I always have a notebook, and I always bring a notebook along. And the last CanJam, I was sitting there, and I remember somebody next to me looked over, and he looked at my notebook, and he's like, yeah, one of the few. I was like, well, I mean, for me, if I truly want to listen to something and try to get an impression, I'll write down some notes, because I just retain information better when I write down notes. And it's always something I can go back to. So whether it's a notebook, like I said, don't have to do that. It can be a notebook. You could just take notes on your phone. I mean, we're in the day and age of stylus pens and everything that people can do that with, or just typing them in. Um, Leave your credit card at home. It's probably a very good idea, actually. But unfortunately, most people are not going to do that. But you're right. Leave your credit card at home because it is damn tempting. I mean, that's sorry, I'll get off on a side subject since you brought that up, Chef Steve. But yeah, I did the same thing. The last CanJam I went to, I bought the Dakoni Cobalt, not the last one, the Chicago one last year. I bought the Cobalt and I got it home and did not like it. I did the review for it, and the review is fine because I tried to be very objective in my review of what I thought people would like about it, but I don't know what I was thinking bringing home a headphone that had no bass. But it had no bass. I think it's because my wife enjoyed it. Actually, that was why, because my wife enjoyed it, and it was a hell of a price at the show. And I was like, oh, I'll just buy it because I love the Dakoni guys are so cool. They were fun to talk with, and I still say some kind of synergy they had set up there made it sound not a ton different, but just better than when I actually got it home and listened. And I was like, yeah, I moved on from it. So yeah, the Cobalt headphone. It's now again preferences. I need some bass, and it just had like none. So yeah, so that's why I bought it and then moved on from it. Um, Next drop from Grumpy Goose, I don't know. All I can tell you about that, Michael, is definitely follow his Instagram if you don't, because he will give you guys usually a week, 2 weeks. Sometimes I don't know if he goes a month out. I don't think he goes that far out, but he'll tell you in advance when he's getting ready to do a drop. I can tell you that Chris knows how desired these headphone stands are, so he is trying to ramp up more production and try to produce more of them every year as he goes, now that he's seeing more and more people buying them. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a drop, within the next few months here, because it takes him some time. I mean, you got to think about this last drop. He had 29 headphone stands, and if you're thinking 6 hours per stand, do the math. I mean, that's a lot, plus a week's time to sit for them to be ready. But yeah, I know he wants to produce more of those. But yeah, leave your credit card at home. Yeah, that's a good point about CanJam. And then the other thing I would say about CanJam too, and this is coming from somebody that loves going to CanJams, is I personally don't find them the best benefit of truly understanding if I'm going to like a headphone or not. Only because it is so busy at CanJams. And even if you're in one of the side rooms, because, usually ZMF has their own room, or Dan Clark will have something. Sometimes he shares it with another company, Head Amp, or I think he shared it this past time with Stax when I was there at SoCal. But even if you're in a side room, there's still a lot of people in there. And let's face it, a lot of open back headphones. You're hearing a lot of noise around you. Even if you don't think you're hearing it, believe me, it's there. It's just background noise. As much as you try to focus in, it can be very hard. Excuse me. It can be very hard to really focus in on what you're listening on. So the reason why I bring a notebook, just because sometimes it's kind of fun to write the notes, and then when I get to actually hear it for myself, I'm like, oh, okay, I agree or disagree on this. I do still think that you're going to get a general idea. I mean, don't get me wrong there. I remember when I was at the Odyssey booth, I think it was the LCD 4Z. Don't quote me on that because they have all different models. It was one of the LCDs, we'll say that, was so heavy when I put it on my head. And I know they're heavy headphones anyway, and it wasn't an LCD X, but it was so heavy. I was like, I could never own this because this is distracting me in just a few minutes. So, there are no long vowels in Sundara. Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm the king of mispronunciation. If you watch my channel and all, you'll know that. So, but yeah, I mean, I do think that you can get like little hints and little tastes of headphones and gear when you're at CanJam. But like I said, to get a full impression, like I'll have so many times where like, hey, what was your favorite thing? You know, what did you hear in this one and this one? It's like I can give you basic points of things. When I sit in the ZMF room, sometimes that can be good. ZMF has a lot of their closed back things. I think closed back headphones, you'll get a little better of an idea just because you are blocked out a little bit. But if you're like me, when I'm sitting down listening to something and like somebody's, kind of standing over me, and I know they're not trying to hover, but, they're obviously waiting to listen, that's distracting. And it's not, I don't mean that any offense to anybody. I've done that to other people, but I'm saying like it's a little distracting when you're trying to focus in. So it's hard to stay focused in. The other tip along with that I would give you just as a courtesy is don't forget to turn the volume down before you hang a headphone back up or put the IEMs back, because everybody has different levels of hearing and what we think is good to listen to. And I mean, yeah, just remember that to turn the volume down. Or if you've, plugged a headphone into some other amp or whatever, just, and remember that with the vendors and things like that. But yeah, there's just some courtesy things there I think people tend to forget. It's easy to do. I've almost forgot it a couple of times, like, oh yeah, I got to turn this down. So remember to do that. And, I will tell you, that's kind of the other thing that I'm talking about with getting distracted is I remember sitting there at SoCal last year, and I actually was listening to some music, and I don't listen super, super loud in my opinion. I think I'm probably like 80 dB average and below. And somebody sitting next to me had theirs cranked and it was over whatever I was listening to. I was like, well, there goes my impression because I'm not cranking this up just to combat that guy. But that's what I'm saying. Everybody's got different levels that they're going to listen to. And then, just so there's that. So that's why I said solid, like pinpointed impressions, I just don't believe truly happen unless you really do go to a CanJam focused on just, a small handful of gear that you can spend a lot of time with that. And if you're spending a lot of time with that, hopefully you're doing it in segments because, sitting down with one headphone for a long time is, I don't want to say rude, but I mean, it can be if there's a lot of people waiting to listen to it. I get it if you want to listen to a few tracks or something, but, just saying, if you want some personal time, you could probably ask for something like that, I would think, depending on how busy somebody is. That's the other thing I was going to bring up is if you do want to, like, say you're listening to the ZMF Bokeh, and maybe you're like, hey, I want to check this out on a Mojo 2 or something, talk to the different guys there. And a lot of times they're accommodating to say, yeah, sure, you can go ahead and borrow the headphone and take it over there. Or, hey, you can borrow this portable and take it over there. And, not everybody's going to be accommodating like that. So just understand that and respect that. But that's the other thing that you can definitely do at a CanJam if you want to get some pairings. Like maybe you have a certain amp at home and you want to hear a certain headphone on that amp, ask them. I mean, especially if you tell them that way. You got to remember, these guys are there to interest you in their products in hopes that you will buy from them. So leave your credit card at home, like the guy said, if you don't want to have that end up happening. Because I will tell you that there are a lot of great show prices, unfortunately, fortunately, from a lot of the guys there. I know ZMF, he always does a discount on his gear that he brings to CanJam. And like I said, a lot of the other guys do too. They'll do special show pricing for things. So it makes it damn tempting when they have that going on top of everything else. I would tell you, if you have any inkling to purchase something, to definitely do yourself a favor and listen to many things before you're like, oh, this sounds great, but I haven't heard anything else, but I'm just going to buy this. Like, don't do that. Unless for some aesthetic purpose or whatever, like you have to have that product. Yeah, don't do that. Give yourself a chance to listen to some other things. Yeah, the other thing I would say, sorry, I was looking at my CanJam notes there, is just, I think the other important part is what I talked about segments, like give yourself breaks. Of course, everybody can grab a lunch or something like that, but, walk out and leave for a little bit before going to listen to too many different things in a row, because that's also where everything can start to sound the same, even though it doesn't. It just, that's that fatigue that I'm talking about. Yes, I am so upset at myself that at SoCal, Nathan was talking about the Mass Koba. Kobo. Is it Kobo? It doesn't matter. I'm going to pronounce it wrong either way. I know what you're talking about. So when I was at the SoCal CanJam, I had it on my list to check out the Mass Koba, and I never did. I don't know why. Well, I know why. Every time I walked by, somebody was sitting there. I should have just waited, but every time I would wait for a couple of minutes, something else would open up, and I'd go check that out. And maybe that's another tip, now that I say that, to throw in there is like, if you really want to listen to something, just wait it out. Because, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some times that you're going to have to wait for a little bit before you can sit down and listen to something. I know the headphone 2 that was at SoCal was extremely popular for people that went, and Mass Koba was definitely one of those too, where there was always a line for somebody to want to listen to those. So, yeah, do yourself a favor and just wait, get your turn, and do yourself a favor if it's something you really want to listen to. The Bravara booth, I think that's a cool thing. That's what I haven't checked out yet, so I've got that on my list of things I want to check out this time, assuming they'll be back, just because I think it's cool to have a little personal listening room. I've already done the HE1, so that's really not in my list to do it again. It was very cool the first time, and yeah, the line for Bravara, exactly, Tom. That was no joke. I think at SoCal, I think it was like 20 people deep, and that's probably why I didn't check it out. I just didn't care to wait that long. For me, some of my motivations with CanJam is a little different than others in that I went there also as a YouTuber, so I wanted to make some connections and talk to people, and that's probably the part that I enjoy the most with going to CanJam is meeting the people and the connections that I can make with, the different audio companies and things. And I like to hear people's stories. I think that's fun. I remember sitting down at SoCal to breakfast with one of the guys from, gosh, I can't even remember the name now, but the micro ear, whatever, the like crazy $5,000 earbud, luxury item that he was selling. He was such a cool dude to talk to. But yeah, I mean, the connections are the other thing I highly recommend if you're that type of person. Now, what's funny about that is audiophiles, not labeling everybody, but many of us are introverts. I'm one of them. So to say I go there to meet people is kind of funny. It's like, here, can I text you and just talk that way? But no, I mean, seriously, it is fun to get to know people. And, if you haven't been to a CanJam, I would definitely always recommend to go talk to Zach and Bevan. They are the most genuine people in the business, in my opinion. And I will always say that. And I always enjoy talking and meeting with them. I could absolutely hate their products, and I would always speak highly of them. And that's obviously not true. I love their products, but I'm just saying they're just that kind of just excellent people to talk to. But there's many others like that too. That's not just Zach and ZMF. I just think he's kind of the gold standard of just genuine, wonderful people to talk to. Ryan and Modhouse, like you brought up, Nathan, I can't wait to meet him in person because he's been a super cool guy to talk to just over I have talked to him on the phone, but over, internet and things too. So, all right, I'm going to move on to kind of, I don't mean to make a lot of the stream or a big part of the stream just about me, but I do want to talk about this because I think it is relevant for my own personal journey to share, so kind of others can look at this as well for themselves. And that's really just my journey as a YouTuber, and an audio YouTuber, I should say, because it's really what I am. I started with the whole audio and tech. I was like, who am I kidding? I'm an audio YouTuber. And I think it's funny because like I'll look back at some of my early videos and I'm like, ooh, did I really say that? But it's part of the process. And I think that's what's exciting about this hobby and every hobby that people get involved with is, the little funny mistakes that we make along the way and things that we say or misspeak, or, hey, we take somebody's word for, the Bible, and then we spread that word and it's not even true. And, I've done that myself, but the journey is so fun, and I don't regret a single second of anything I've done on this YouTube channel, even if I have made mistakes, and I definitely have, just because it has made me more the wiser for, you know, the audio journey that I've gone on. And I definitely recommend that to other people too. Like, as much as you can, try to find out this stuff for yourself for the most part. I mean, obviously, there's some things you're going to have to ask the questions for. Um, and I'm not talking about the objective things like measurements and things like that, but I mean, just in general, like, you know, what the hell are they talking about with this sound? Like, when you start to really listen to different gear, then you start to pick up on those things. That's been the most fun for me. And there's some words that I've used along the way that I had no idea truly what they meant until I got to experience more of this hobby, and now I really am starting to understand it more. And this is probably one of the most difficult hobbies to put into words when you're describing your experience. And I still struggle with that. And I think I'm always going to struggle with that, to be honest, because there's not always the perfect word to describe it, and everybody's use of words is going to be different. Some people like to sound like a walking dictionary or thesaurus, and other people are like me, and I don't do that. But it's it's a lot of fun, and it is definitely a journey that you will make mistakes, and just be okay with the mistakes and learn from it. That's what mistakes are. I think that's what we're all meant to go through with anything, and this hobby is no different from that. So that's kind of the other thing I wanted to touch on, like I said, is just, you know, if you guys ever check out my channel, like my older videos, keep that in mind, please. And I think everybody does. I haven't gotten a lot of flack for any of that, but it's kind of funny. I remember talking to Warren from HiFi, such a good dude, and him and I were having a conversation at SoCal. And I think it was maybe Dan Clark or somebody that we were talking to, and he was talking about my channel. And I thought it was funny. He's like, yeah, if you check out his channel, look at his first video. And I'm like, no, don't tell him that. And he's like, no, look at his first video and then compare it to his video from today. I was like, okay, all right, fair enough. I get the comparison now. But I mean, yeah, it's true. We all go through that journey. And it is fun to recap that. Like, any of you that are into this hobby now, like, if you think about whatever it is that got you into it, if you've been into it for a while, and what you thought of that product compared to now. I mean, some of you may say the exact same thing. That's great. But I think a lot of us would look back and be like, yeah, I really didn't have a full understanding of what I was talking about with that. So that's kind of how I feel about, for instance, the Aeon 2 Noir that I reviewed before, I owned before, and like anytime I listen to it now, it's like, that doesn't fit my preferences at all. That, I think, is the other part of the hobby that's a lot of fun, is how our preferences change, and they do. I mean, I in no way have the same preference I did when I first got into this hobby. I thought I loved neutral. I told myself that because at the time I think that was like the thing that people needed to like, neutral or natural, or I don't know, however you want to describe that, you know, harmonish curve type where there's not a lot of bass and it's not too elevated in the treble to be too sibilant or anything, and it's got, you know, flat mid-range or decent, I don't know. Anyways, just I thought that's what I liked, and the more I've gone on this journey, I'm like, no, that to me is boring for me. To others, it's probably what they prefer, or maybe what they prefer, but that's why listening to, you know, gear and going through that journey kind of really brings out the person that you are and what you listen to and what you enjoy, and your music that you listen to says a lot about the person as well. You know, if you're somebody that likes to listen to lots of multiple genres of music, then you probably will like different signatures, because it's not going to line up with every single thing that's out there. That's the other fun part about this hobby too, is if you don't want EQ, just buy 5 different headphones. or buy, as I keep hearing, an Odyssey LCD headphone, like an LCD5 or something, and just EQ the hell out of it, because you can just make it sound like multiple headphones if you want to do that. So I don't know. Yeah, so I don't really have any other topics on this. Actually, I was going to talk about power misconceptions. And for this one, I don't really want to get too deep in the weeds because I don't want to sound like I know more than what I do with this because I'm still learning along the way. But I will tell you, like, the biggest thing I've learned about power misconceptions is I think it was Golden Sound that did a video on the Diablo 2 that was fairly recent. Somebody told me to check it out, and I did. And I, learned a lot from that. And it is interesting how, speaking of power, when you'll look at amps or DACs or things, it's mostly amps for the most part, and you'll see a site like blurt something out like, oh, this can go up to 5 watts, but that's all they say. And then somebody's like, oh, wow, well, that has a ton of power. That's going to drive everything. But, you have to look at the individual specs. And unfortunately, not every company's forthcoming about those individual specs on what they're talking about when it comes to power. And the biggest thing I've learned of that too is like for 90 some percent of the gear that we listen to, you don't even need 5 watts of power. I mean, you truly don't. And we're talking milliwatts is all you need to drive things. I mean, hell, my ZMF Atrium Closed and even my O-Tour Classic, they're 300 ohm headphones. When I first got into this, I was thinking, oh, 300 ohms, I must need a lot of power to drive 300 ohms. Completely looking at it in the wrong way. Impedance and sensitivity go hand in hand, but honestly, the sensitivity, in my opinion, matters a lot more when it comes to just that raw power, and then the impedance comes into play when we're thinking about in tubes and things like that. Yeah, I figured, Nathan, I figured Golden would probably be there. I know he was at the last one too, so. But yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions on power. My journey just through ZMF has definitely taught me that I can tell you, like, my Atrium Closed. In fact, I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this last night. I was like, the more I listen to that headphone, the more I'm like, anything can give it enough volume. That's not a problem. But being a closed back headphone, that mid-range on that headphone can be just underwhelming on different amps. And what I've really found with that is amps that don't necessarily do anything with impedance. Like tube amps, especially my HA-3A, I have, an impedance setting, and that opens that headphone right up. Whereas when I listen to it on like I don't know, like the Midgard or something, the Midgard's got plenty of power for the Atrium Closed, but it doesn't have much in the way of impedance, and the mid-range sounds a little relaxed and scooped out in a way. And so, that's how power and synergies can really affect gear. And that's just one example of the many, many out there. And, to kind of take a step back on what I was talking about, things that I've learned along the way, I'm talking about even recent. Like, I kind of wish at some point I can get the Yamaha YH5000 back in to listen to, because that headphone frustrated me so much with the gear that I had, but I didn't have the HA-3A, which does a great job with all different headphones, to try that on the Yamaha YH5000. And that was another headphone where everybody told me it's a Summit Fi headphone. See, I used the Summit Fi term. It's a Summit Fi headphone. You got to use Summit Fi gear on it, or at least high-end gear on it. You can't use your $500 or $600 amps on it, and kind of pissed me off. But now I want to test the theory, and I'm going to try to do that at CanJam. If there is a YH5000 there, I'm going to try to pair it up with something a lot more. Marcus, I'm rambling, man. So if you got a question, shoot away. But yeah, with the YH5000, like I said, I want to try that up with some higher end gear to test that theory, to see if that truly does make a big difference. Because I did not really enjoy that headphone at all on everything I have. And in my personal opinion was, if it's that expensive of a headphone, it shouldn't make that huge of a difference. But then again, talking about my Atrium Closed is kind of the point I'm making there, in that, yeah, it actually does with synergy. So using solid state tube amp. So for the so for those of you guys who don't see this, SN, in your HiFi Man FOMO video, you mentioned using a solid state and tube amp, the HA-3A. What were the differences you heard between them for the HE-1000 SE? So The HA-3A, I actually was not impressed with that amp with any of the HiFi mins. It was good, but I felt like the solid states did just as well, if not even a little better at times, because I didn't think those took advantage of the tube amps as much, especially the HA-3A. And that was a rarity, I gotta say. I don't know if it's just a HiFi min thing with that amp, because my organic's the same way. I didn't, when I listened to the organic, I listened on the IHA6 or even the Midgard, hell, or even the Mojo 2, I think sounds really good. The HA-3A just kind of thinned it out. I think it might have something to do with the impedance matching, to be perfectly honest, because even on the lowest impedance setting on the HA-3A, I think it's like 16 to 56. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it just doesn't do as much for the HiFi man headphones from that tube amp. Now, there's lots of tube amps. The WA7, guys, that I just did a video on, the WA7 and the organic sounded really good, but that's an example of a hybrid tube amp. And I think hybrid tube amps, in my experience that I've had with them, do sound really good with planars. And I think it sounded really good with the organic. I would imagine with the HE 1000s, either the SE or even the Stealth, I think are going to sound good on the WA7 being a hybrid tube amp. And I say that because I also had the Monolith Liquid Platinum. And when I had the Liquid Platinum, which is a hybrid tube amp, I had the Aria Stealth before I sold that one and moved on from it. But I thought that also sounded good on the hybrid tube amps. So, but again, there are so many tube amps out there that I don't want to just label that and tell you that's just how it is with those. But just with the HA-3A, I think solid state would have been my way to go, or solid state hybrid. Honestly, I would, if I had to label it, I'd say solid state hybrid tube amp first, and then solid state, at least with that particular situation. Hope that answers that for you, at least from my perspective. Gumby 3, what is that? Is that something even I haven't heard of? You can tell me what that is. Maybe I'm not following you there. Oh, you're selling your AB1266. Yeah, I've heard. God, that's like the Frankenstein headphone. I mean, it truly is. I think that's what DMS or somebody called it back in the day anyway. But yeah, that's one of those interesting headphones. Like, I don't think I would ever own that, simply because I feel like that's a very, like, I'm going to sit here and not move headphone, because it rests and you have to have it, gapped so much to have that perfect bass response. It sounds incredible when you have it paired up exactly right, but I don't want to just, like, the same thing with the HE1 from Sennheiser is like, yeah, it's $60,000, but I don't know. It's too luxurious for me. Gumby is shorthand for, oh, the gunner. Okay, yeah, I got you now. Sorry about that. Yeah, and I haven't even heard, however you say the Gumby. I'm gonna say Gumby since you said that. I haven't even heard that, but I know a buddy of mine that are some shit fanboys, just like I am, that swear by it. So I can imagine. Rode NTH 100. Yeah, now when you say locking mechanism, what are you talking about there? Because they could be a couple of different things. Are you talking about cable locking? Because I haven't had experience with the Rode 100. So let you answer that. So I got to ask you, Marcus, I saw you said Spring 3. I think that's what you said, right? And getting a Magni. So you're talking about just having something just cheap to, I shouldn't say, well, it is cheap, but just something to have in place until that comes out. Is that what you're saying? There's nothing wrong with the Magni, by the way. I think it's crazy how that amp can sound good with so many things for as cheap as it is. Now I remember the other one I was going to talk about earlier when we were talking about budget was, I really need to get a JDS Labs amp in either the Atom or something, because I did hear one briefly at CanJam, and those guys know what they are doing, just like Schiit. They know what they were doing, and they don't get enough recognition, I think, at all, not even close. And I mean, the Homage 2 um, speaks to that with Zach's collaboration with them, with making that amp and how good that is. I think that's another company that punches well above their price point for the gear they make. I think just by my experience of having one of their amps in hand to see, it's probably just maybe the quality of materials that makes it a little bit cheaper, but it's certainly not the quality of sound. Oh, adjustment locking system. I gotcha. Okay, for the NTH 100. Yeah, like I said, I haven't experienced that one. I thought you were talking maybe about locking cables, because I know I think it was Josh Fowler that was. I think he's picky about locking cables because he's right. Like if you're getting up out of a desk fast or something and you have a locking cable, like that could be bad. So, whereas cables pull out, you're good. Nice. About Jason. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, would imagine he'll be at CanJam. He seems to be at every single one. It's always fun talking to him. Guy knows so much. He's another really good guy to talk to. Talking about Jason Stoddard from Schiit. And like I said, I'm a big Schiit fanboy. So, take that for what it is, too. Yeah, that'll be nice. The FPGA DAC, are you talking about? Well, what are you talking about with the FPGA DAC? I don't think you're talking about this, but this one has the FPGA, if that's what you're referring to. That technology. Um, Big Bifrost, yeah. Yeah, I'm always excited for Schiit products when they come out, and I like how he's kind of redoing his lineup a little bit, and he's doing more of the module stuff. I think that's smart. Like I said, with the Magni Unity, the Jotunheim 2 was. I really liked Jotunheim 2 when I had it. I honestly, some days wish I still had it, but I ended up moving on from that one. Oh, okay. I just didn't realize that was an FPGA DAC as well. Nathan, no. Gisele, actually, I've been in contact with them, but they are so backed up on their own products that they're releasing that they have me on a list to check out some. I'll check them out at CanJam. I think I listened to when I was at SoCal. I listened to the Cobalt, funny enough, from Deconi on a Gisele Labs amp, but that was not a good listen or anything just because of the headphone itself, not to knock the Cobalt, but yeah, I mean, that was the brief listen that I've had with their stuff. But I know Chris O'Neill that does the stands, I know he collaborated with them on, some of their casings and chassis and looked awesome, to be honest. So yeah, that's definitely another one I want to check out. I know a lot of people swear by them, that they make quality gear. So I can tell you couple things, guys, before I wrap this up, because I'm excited about it and I just want to share it. So just a couple of things that I've got coming in, so you guys hear about this. Now, first of all, I have a Patreon, and my plan is to truly keep like any news of stuff I'm going to be checking out for Patreon, but it's not grown. I have a couple of people on there, which is fine. It's brand new, and I will start, posting more on there as I get more people to it. And I'll probably change some of the pricing tiers because I'm just learning through this whole Patreon thing, but not to ramble on that. But what I'm trying to get at is I've got the Austrian audio composer coming in. I should have that actually tomorrow. I'm really excited to check that out. And then I also have the Sennheiser Momentum 4. I do like earbuds a lot. It's probably the only thing I listen to outside of headphones, just because IEMs are cord attached, and if I'm going to be cord attached, I'm listening to headphones typically. But the Momentum 4 I'm excited for. Now, I didn't listen to any of the previous versions of the Sennheiser Momentums, but I do believe they're actually sending me a Momentum 3 just so I can check it out to compare it to, not to do any kind of a video on. So those are two things I'm really excited about. I still got to do the Mojo 2 video. I've taken a lot of notes on this thing, but this thing's a learning curve. It's a lot of fun, but it's a learning curve. So I've still got to do that. And I promise I will get a video out on the HA-3A. I've had enough people ask me about the amp in more detail, and I've listened to it enough to where I don't even know how many notes I'm going to have to take, other than maybe some technical specs that I don't memorize in my head. But I know how that amp sounds, so I'll be able to share that with you guys and do a video on the HA-3A. And outside of that, I think I might have a couple of other things coming in still, but it's not confirmed on what product before I can say anything. It's nothing unreleased, but before I can say anything about what I'm going to get sent in, a couple of partnerships I'm working on. So, but yeah, I'm excited about this new stuff I'm checking out. A couple of these videos will hopefully be out before CanJam, and then the rest will probably be out after, because I will definitely do a CanJam video. And I'll definitely have my wife Bree join me on this video, since she's going to be with me at CanJam. Magni Unity with... Yeah, I mean, exactly, Marcus. And thank you for making that point. So he was talking about how the Magni Unity with the 6XX, how it sounded good. I'm guessing that's what you're getting at, and give you reality of how good stuff is compared to the expensive stuff. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, price too many times is valued a lot more than it should be, wherein a lot of times price can just be more expensive materials. Price could be not so much the name. I mean, yes, I shouldn't say that. I mean, yes, it can be the name, but I think it's more about the materials than anything, quality materials and that kind of thing that can sometimes add into the price, or maybe an accessory package that you get along with a product can go in with the price, but it doesn't always equal the quality of it. And that's where I think some high-end expensive products can be underwhelming simply because they're so expensive. You should be blown away, and it's like, yeah, that sounds good, but again, like you said, so does the Schiit Magni. So yeah, I mean, the price jump can make a big deal there. Okay, well guys, I'm at an hour mark here, and I try to keep these to an hour for now. I do want to try to do bi-weekly streams. I did a poll on that, and the poll kind of was mixed between either bi-weekly streams or monthly streams. And I think just to give myself some more consistency with videos and things, and to give me more practice on streams, I'll try to do bi-weekly ones. I think they're fun to do and interact with you guys, and eventually get some other people on here with me, whether it's Tyler or, like I said, some companies or something like that on these streams. I think that would be fun. I would love to do one of those streams with some other YouTubers, even just to have a fun discussion about some things. So I've got some ideas on that, but I'll start throwing out ideas whenever I'm doing streams of topics that you'd like to see covered, or things that you guys would like to discuss. So I don't just make it whatever I want to do. I want to get you guys involved in that. So like I said, I am going to probably do bi-weekly streams and be more consistent with that. And thankfully I've got all of this working enough, and hopefully the quality of video is a little bit better than my last one. This is just me being nitpicky, but I didn't like the quality of the video of my last stream. Even though it was 1080p, it looked like, I don't know, 780p trying to be 1080p, or 720, whatever you want to call it. But again, that's just me being picky. So I do thank you guys for joining me today. If you have anything else, drop it in there, and I can answer or reply to it right now. Otherwise, if you have anything else afterwards, drop it in the comments. I'm pretty good about responding to those and getting back to you. But if you're going to be at CanJam in a couple of weeks, I will be there both days with my wife. So, definitely say hello, Nathan. I'll definitely be seeing you at CanJam. Look forward to meeting you there. And guys, enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Cheers.